Hey, Dave here, and today we're going to check out the work of Jonathan Wenberg. Now, he's obviously a concept artist based in Adelaide, Australia. Adelaide, Australia. Now he's not exactly a painter. He does do 2D artwork, but his 2D is actually more of like a line sketch, like a line art with some flat colors or maybe some kind of shading with the flat colors. And that's usually where he stops his rendering phase. And he also dabbles in 3D. I think he does... I don't think he just dabbles. I think it's a part of his own workflow. And he does get some very interesting results. And even though I'm focused right now on just 2D, I do find his 3D work very interesting and inspiring. Because it's still a concept, right? And design-wise, it's very kind of realistic. Especially with these concepts right here. These sorts of like drones. Very, very interesting. And yeah, I think he does know how to use 3D Coat, but he primarily used, I think, Blender for most of his models here. Or most of his like 3D concepts. So yeah, I think he did start out with a 3D thing. Like a 3D sketch. I believe this was done in 3D Coat, and then he probably did a line sketch over that. That's my guess. And yeah, he does have a very presentable way of presenting his work. Again, it's not impressionistic at all. He's very kind of technical in a way. Almost like an engineer, right? He's not very artsy. I mean, you can tell his kind of artistic lean. It shows, especially in his 2D characters, but yeah, he does have a bit of a technical side. And he does a lot of like line work for his 2D. It's a type of stuff I actually would not like to do because it's I feel like it's so technical, right? But I do see its value because if you don't, you need to have at least enough detail in your kind of concept to actually make sense. And obviously for me, I probably would not go too far with the detailing, but you know, he's pretty good at it. He's pretty good at it, right? And he does keep his rendering style simple, flat colors plus some shading, simple shading, right? Shit. So these are some helmet designs of his. And yeah, very, very clean. I mean, it's not super clean. It's obviously it's not a super rough sketch, but it's clean enough that is actually presentable. Because there is a kind of rough sketch that's really just meant for you, but there's also kind of a rough sketch that's actually presentable, right? So, yeah. So he does this thing where he offers like a lot of like variations in terms of color, sometimes in his 2D characters. And it's pretty cool, you know, just seeing the variation or possibilities of like the color scheme. It's it feels so professional, right? Okay, line sketch. But again, he's not like super refined though with the line sketch. I mean, if you zoom in, you can kind of see that kind of jagginess in his line art, but the moment you zoom out, it's kind of not as noticeable. So maybe that's the trick, to just kind of make sure it's not obvious when you see the whole thing from the full picture view, right? Color version. And the same thing goes for this character. I mean, he did have like a rough sketch in the beginning, and then he eventually, you know, like sketched on top of it in a more refined manner, but it's not super clean if you zoom in, as you can see. Although the shading is actually kind of cool because I think he's using some kind of soft brush here to kind of show off that 3D-ness or the kind of surface 3D-ness of the like suit and armor, right? I think he started with a flat sketch here, right? Or a line sketch with some flat colors, and then eventually added some shadows. I think this is part of his a homework of his in school. And yeah, he does like a lot of things, or he can do a lot of things. Vehicles, I think, is his primary thing. Second would be his characters. And he can also do like architectural concepts. So he's kind of like a well-rounded artist. He can pretty much do anything he wants. And he also has like a style of presenting. He likes line art with some basic rendering and like just flats and a shadow kind of layer. And yeah, it's super clean. It's very, very presentable. I mean, yeah, when you zoom in, you can see that actual draftsmanship, but it's cool enough to kind of, you know, it's presentable enough, right? It's not too vague or sketchy at all. Nice. Maybe he did use some 3D here. I'm not sure. I can't tell, but it's nicely done, right? It feels like it was done in 3D at first, but it's hard to tell, you know? Same for this concept. Maybe he did start out with like a silhouette, and then he did a line sketch on top of it, and then did some rendering. And the way he renders his forms or his colors here, he does like to use the soft brush, and it does add to that kind of surface effect. It actually makes the thing look 3D, you know? Seeing the kind of gradation of values, it adds this kind of smooth transition between like surfaces. So it's kind of like a nice way of adding a bit of realism to the concept. And again, it does focus, I think his primary thing or is vehicle design. And I'm not sure if this was part of his homework. I mean, I think this whole kind of batch of images are part of his like homework, but this color palette here is actually kind of interesting. It's kind of like a guide for him in terms of, it's kind of like a percentage of how much he can apply the colors on each concept, and it does create the kind of consistency. For example, in this color palette here, the red is kind of the smallest, so he's going to be very, very careful as to where he'll actually put the red accents, right? And most of it is actually kind of green-gray, and so that's going to be the majority of his color scheme, right? So I'm not sure if this was actually part of the instruction of the homework or exercise, but it's a nice technique to have, or kind of guide to have, kind of on the side to help guide your color schemes, right? To make it a bit more consistent, so you don't have to constantly think about which color to use. And he did use some kind of orange here, orange brown, so you can see more of it compared to the red, which is a bit more rare. And yeah, he does like a lot of iterations, and I think it's very, very valuable, especially when it comes to concept art, because you're there for the concepts, right? And I think being able to pump out like a lot of ideas is like the primary role of a concept artist, right? And it reminds me of the idea of being an idea factory. This was actually mentioned to me, or mentioned by Trent Kanuga. He talked about the idea of being an idea factory, where you just kind of pump out concepts, you know? And if you're kind of good at that and people can see that you can come up with a lot of interesting ideas, I think it's going to make you a bit more attractive, right? So this is actually more of his 2D, it's still 2D, but his character 2D art. And it's actually not too bad with like the character design. I mean, yes, he does focus more on like the fashion thing, but like he does add a bit of some expression in the face, which is kind of cool. And it does help to, it actually goes with the design, right? Or the kind of mood of the subject, because I think he was trying to come up with like a Sith kind of apprentice design, a female one, and again, he does like a lot of iterations, which is really cool. And it's actually kind of consistent. Like the way he does his vehicles is the way he does his characters as well, or at least it looks that way. Like it's not so far apart. Like he's consistently good at both vehicles and characters. So I don't know, he feels so well rounded to me. And they're actually kind of very interesting designs, right? And they all have each of their own kind of distinct fields, right? And yeah, I think he pretty much owned the idea of iterating a concept multiple times, right? Even with this kind of lightsaber design. I mean, come on. Very, very interesting. I do find the curved lightsaber design interesting. I'm not sure who made that, or I'm not sure if every kind of Sith has the same kind of lightsaber, but I do know Ventress and fuck, I can't remember the old guy's name. It started with a D. Anyway, interesting design. And yeah, I think this is more focused on fantasy. On a fantasy kind of themed project. And again, his faces do have a bit of expression, and it's actually pretty good, right? And of course, he does focus more on the fashion kind of attire thing. And not so much maybe on like the actual creature or character. Maybe a bit, but he does iterate more when it comes to the fashion thing or the costume design. Even the folds look pretty cool. Fuck. So this one's a bit more developed, but he still left the line sketch, right? So it's not a full-on painting or rendering, but again, it's very, very presentable. And again, he does a lot of these sorts of iterations. And each of them look very presentable, right? God, and they're actually kind of dynamic, right? Even if the pose it's kind of very, very similar, because they're kind of standard poses, but the way he handles the attire, he uses the actual garment or clothing to help with the composition of the character, right? Like even the way he added or used this kind of cape, right? It makes it kind of strong, right? Like the shape itself, like the silhouette, just makes it more impactful, which is pretty cool, right? Some more designs, and again, I'm very happy seeing these sorts of things. Just seeing iterations of a concept is like, it really shows off the creativity of the artist. So this one's more about the color scheme, some kind of gun design, I think. And yeah, they look so visually consistent, right? Like you can see a lot of like repeating forms or shapes. And it goes well with the actual kind of attire, right? So design-wise, I think is also like he's more of a designer, I guess, right? A lot of like production stuff, I think. And again, with the faces, it's pretty good, you know? Now again, he doesn't like go in and paint the entire thing. Just a simple rendering style with some, like he likes to do the inks and then add, you know, just basic colors and shit. But yeah, very cool. A lot of like production type of artwork. But it actually looks very useful compared to my work, which is just so vague. And yeah, maybe this is actually helping me to open up to you know, doing more defined stuff, maybe with like drawings, you know. And maybe this is also kind of inspiring me to kind of amp up my exploration, because just seeing the amount of ideas he can come up with is just cool. Whoa. And again, it's not like he's super refined, right, with the line sketch. You can, at the moment you zoom in, you can see a bit of that roughness to his work, but it's not super like sketchy. It's very, very presentable, right? And again, with the faces, it's not too bad, you know. Looks legit, right? So I'm not sure if this is for some kind of a personal project of his, but yeah, pretty cool. So more design, iterations of the character. Oh, it looks like Padme, right? Senator Padme from Star Wars. And it's actually kind of overwhelming seeing the amount of work he can do. Oh, it reminds me a bit of Ian McKegg's work, because Ian McKegg is actually a pretty good draftsman, you know. And I think I can say the same for Jonathan Wenberg? Fuck. Wenberg. Okay. Fuck me. Let's go here. Yeah, maybe he does have like an Ian McKegg influence in his work. I can't tell, but very good kind of 2D drawing artist, right? Although I've never actually seen Jonathan do like a pure line sketch. He likes to add a bit of color, even if it doesn't have shadows. But yeah, still cool. I think he did not use 3D for this one. It looks like a purely 2D thing, but it's very, very intricate. And I do believe he did include this kind of like a design guide in his kind of post. And again, a lot of iterations and a lot of like exploration of designs here. And again, it really shows off his skill of being able to come up with a lot of concepts, right? Oh, and I'm so glad he posted like a reference board, like a design guide of his work, and it kind of gives you an insight of how he wants to approach his work. So he likes to add, or he wanted to get some of that detail from like ships, right? And he wanted to balance that with like the idea of battleships. Like some areas are just so detailed, and then when it comes to like some parts to like let's say the side of the ship, it's a bit more plain or more clean. So there's this kind of dichotomy, duality, right? And I think he did a good job applying it here. Like you could see like big areas of like clean shapes, and then in some parts it's a bit packed with detail, like this one, right? So let me just okay. So just seeing all these sorts of things is actually kind of interesting, and it's actually useful. And it also shows you the idea of how to use reference, you know? You don't have to like copy things like one-to-one, you know? You can use it, or it's mostly used for inspiration, to actually reference, right? It's not like it's not something you should obey, you know? It's something you should use, right? Or command, right? You have to make it yours. So more design iterations. I mean, look at that. Such a pro. And it helps when you're trying to focus more on if you're trying to focus on design iteration. I think it helps to keep like the view very simple. Notice for his characters, he's not super dynamic with the poses. They're kind of just simple standing poses. Maybe a few shifts here and there with like the hand or arm pose, right? But I think it just helps you save time, right? If you're trying to explore like the character, like the personality, maybe you'll have to explore a bit with the poses. But a lot of his work is based or is focused more on the costume design or the fashion stuff. So the character is not like the personality is not going to be super defined. Maybe a bit, because obviously what the person wears will show a bit of their character. But yeah, if you want to come up with like a lot of concepts, I think it helps to just keep the view simple. For these vehicles, notice how some are just kind of elevations, right? Just flat elevations. And others are more of like isometric views. So yeah, helps to save time. And again, it looks pretty consistent, right? Like he knows what he's trying to achieve. Like even though they're kind of different, right? They all feel like they're part of one world. So I guess it also shows not only his ability to conceptualize a lot of concepts, but also to make sure that it's tied onto like a singular, clear idea, right? Because sometimes whenever I do like iterations, they end up looking so different, and it almost doesn't seem like they're part of like one project. So yeah, I should develop that consistency, right? Whenever I'm doing some kind of project. I mean, geez, 28? Fuck. Oh, this one reminds, or these two remind me of Fett's, Boba Fett's ship, right? Or Jango Fett's ship. It has like the same form. It's kind of vertical, right? And again, very simple kind of pose or kind of view. So to kind of help the artist focus more on the actual design rather than like the story or whatever, or the mood, right? Some more vehicle designs here. Reminds me a bit of Sparth and John Wall and Roberto, because both of them actually do focus heavily on vehicles as well. Although Jonathan likes to do like more line art compared to like Sparth or John Wall and Roberto, right? And yeah, the line art doesn't have to be super clean. I mean, you can actually see a bit of that sketchiness a bit, but it's actually not too sketchy. It's still kind of presentable enough. And I think what really brings it to that kind of extra level is the rendering. The way he does his rendering is what really makes his line sketch come to life, right? It actually looks 3D, and I think it's because of the way he uses the soft brush, right? So I'm pretty sure he started with a few flat colors, and then he did another layer where he did use a bit of the soft, some kind of soft brush to help with the gradients for some highlights here, to show the rounded edges, and of course for adding a bit of shadow, right, in the bottom part of this kind of plane or vehicle, right? So this one's actually a mech. Oh, look at how rough the sketch is, but if you zoom out, it's still very presentable. So I don't know, maybe there's hope for me. And you know what? I remember seeing like a sketch by John Wall and Roberto where he did like his own take on the Evangelion mechs, and I actually saw a bit of his like rough sketch. Like it wasn't like a fully rendered concept, but just seeing how rough it was actually kind of inspired me, because I feel like I'm not the type of guy that's very, clean and just tidy with my line art and life in general, actually. But just being able to see this is actually kind of cool, because it shows you that you can still be kind of clean from afar. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, the design still reads well from afar, so I think that's what matters anyway. And I'm pretty sure maybe this is not his first like line sketch. Maybe he did have an even rougher line sketch, and then he did another semi-rough line sketch, just enough to be kind of understandable, right? And then he kind of made it even more clear with like the color scheme and the shading of the forms, right? Pretty cool. Some more mechs, and again, I like seeing a bit of that roughness. But yeah, I'm actually kind of interested in learning more about like the mechanics of mechs, so I can add a bit of realism whenever I do like a mech, because I have no idea how like springs or hydraulics work, right? So just being able to add like bolts and shit, I think it just adds a bit more realism, right? Yes. Again, he did add this kind of color palette to help hide, or not hide, but guide his color scheme. Um, they actually look more like dinosaurs to me, like a raptor, right? So I believe this was it's a Nautilus design. It's based off of a book, I believe, or a film, like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea or something. I can't remember, but it actually reminds me of the Atlantis guardian, not a guard. It's not a guard. Like the Disney adaptation of the Atlantis concept. There's this kind of mech, this aquatic mech that could that was essentially cool because it was like it was a fighting kind of mech. It wasn't like a random thing. It was meant to be more of a guard, and just seeing how it moved underwater was pretty cool. And I kind of feel that mechanicalness in this series of concepts as well. It actually looks like it belongs in water. Like it does have that segmentation that comes with crustaceans, so that's kind of cool. And he also added that, for example, for this concept, this kind of line, this kind of I'm not sure what it is, but it reminds me of a squid, right, or an octopus, or a giant squid, right? Seeing these sorts of things, and they actually feel like they can move underwater, so that's kind of cool. And again, very, very presentable. Oh, so yeah, it's heavily a line work piece with some, and it looks very solid. Not a lot of texture whenever he does his 2D artwork, right? Even with this 3D, not a lot of texture involved. Very heavily based on just the forms and shapes and design motifs. And maybe he just leaves the textures for another artist to work on, right? So he's actually very specific with the way he works. So that's kind of cool. It helps him be more efficient, I guess, because he knows what his focus is, I guess. Like he likes to stick to the forms more, or the design kind of details, more than like the texturing and shit. So, and again, look at this sheet of explorative work, right? Very, very interesting and inspiring. He's actually a concept artist, right? Because he can actually do a lot of concepts. And okay, Marmex, pretty cool. The line work is a bit minimal here. Maybe he did use some 3D, I can't tell. As a base, perhaps. And I actually want to learn more about folds, because I think you can hide like certain parts of a mech by just covering it with some kind of clothing or fabric, right? So that's kind of nice. And again, not a lot of texture with like the colors and shit. This one doesn't actually have shadows as much. It's very flat, right? The colors are flat, but yeah. Maybe a cast shadow for the entire thing, but that's pretty much it. But cool, nonetheless. Oh, no, these ones are actually more 3D. Maybe he did some post-processing in Photoshop to kind of help with these sorts of elements here, but it actually looks more like a design sheet, right? And like an actual design sheet. Because you have like the specifications here, and a bit of like project details here, and it looks like an architectural template or engineering template. Reminds me of school. Yeah, he did use Blender here for the modeling. And what I like about this kind of series of work, this kind of project of his, this drone project, is it looks so realistic in terms of design. Like it's heavily based on reality. I mean, obviously he does push it, right? But it looks like something the military would invest in. And this is probably where all the the COVID money is going to. More military stuff. Anyway, I love the bikes. and he likes wheels. And again, he's not futuristic with his designs. I mean, he does push it, but the fact that he tries to make it at least realistic is commendable. He also likes to break down the concept into parts. Sometimes you'll see him like add some basic parts on the side to kind of show how he kind of like what the basic parts are and how he applied it to the actual thing. So again, he's more of a designer there. Some more iterations of the bike, and yeah. Oof. Damn. So maybe for these ones, for the thumbnails, or for these rough sketches, maybe he did use Photoshop, because it's faster, right? And it does help if you just leave it to like an elevation kind of view. You don't have to like change the pose every single time, because if you want to like do a lot, you'll have to be efficient with how you work. So by stabilizing the viewpoint, I think it helps you focus more on the design, right? Now this one's more of a Blender rendering, but he could have done some photo bashing after, but I think that's not his focus, right? He wants to show off more of his design and his... Maybe he leaves it at this stage because he just wants to work on this kind of... Or he wants to be in this process, right? In this kind of production process where you just design and just leave it to someone else to kind of touch it up, right? But the concept is essentially there. If he wanted to, he could bring it to a more like a painted level, right? By just adding a few more layers of photo bashing and paint overs, right? And some like post-processing shit. Some more vehicles. This one with one wheel, some kind of rocket launcher, right? Yeah, pretty cool stuff, man. Pretty cool stuff. And again, it's very realistic, like the way he applies the same kind of mechanical parts and motifs. It actually makes it consistent. Like all of his drones seem like they come from one designer, and being able to see consistent looking work is actually going to be helpful, just because it just makes more impact, right? If you're kind of too scattered with like the look, with the subject matter, it's going to be so cluttered and it's actually going to confuse the viewer. But if you have like, even if each concept is fairly different, if it has kind of the same elements or similar elements, it's going to look very, very cohesive, right? Oof. Damn. And even the color scheme is very simple, very military-ish, with the kind of muted green or desaturated green, right? God, it's so cool. Design-wise, this thing is a beast, right? So just some extra views of the concept, and it looks pretty cool. Damn. I'm not sure what this is. Some kind of rocket launcher, perhaps? Okay, some more shots of this kind of thing. It actually looks like a big gun, right? But damn, imagine these sorts of things being in the battlefield. That would be so scary. Because I do, just kind of a side point, there is this push to eventually remove like human beings in the battlefield, and I think that's going to be like the scariest shit ever, right? Because I don't think it will just stop with like drones attacking drones. It will actually be drones eventually just killing everyone. Just think Terminator, right? So I'm actually kind of scared whenever people do concepts like this, or even whenever I do like a mech. The moment I add a gun, I'd start kind of panicking. Like, am I contributing to the chaos, to the AI that's going to be, you know, like the overlords of the future, right? Because that's kind of my fear, but I always try to remind myself that it's not about I shouldn't blame the tool, right? I should blame how it's being used. Because these things can be helpful, I guess, but obviously it can go to a dark road, right? And again, it's so tempting, even if I'm scared, just because it looks cool, I'm kind of torn, right? as much as I want peace, I kind of want war, but obviously not real war. I want like video game war, more like simulations and shit. Not exactly where a type of war where people would actually die, But yeah, just seeing these sort of concepts, very scary, but very very cool looking, right? And I think that's a nice thing when designing, or a nice thing to remember about when you're trying to design something. Just think of what's cool, right? Of course, you have to base it on some kind of reality to make the design grounded in something. But having the kind of cool guide, that cool idea, that cool factor in the work, I think that's going to help your work be, or push your work to be more attractive, obviously, right? So just think of what would make the thing cooler, right? So this one actually does have legs. It's bipedal. I'm not sure what this thing here is. A bomb, perhaps? This one does have a gun. Or could it be some kind of fuel tank? I can't tell. Damn. So this one's more of a surveyor, I feel, right? Because it does have like a big ass camera. Or I think it's a camera, right? Fuck. I'm not sure what this is. But again, the designs are super cool. And yeah. Whoa. Fuck. And it's so useful doing this in 3D because you can provide like a lot of views of the same thing instead of having to redraw them or repaint them again. Eventually, I do want to dabble, or not dabble, but I want to try getting good at using Blender. The same way I am I want to be at the level of my Photoshop skills when it comes to Blender, right? I want to make it a part of me where I don't really think about, like the software or like the menus and shit. I just kind of just do it, But right now my laptop can't actually take it, but eventually I'll get it fixed, and I'll be able to like do more 3D stuff because I did try to download like the new Blender, but it just crashed. Like my laptop could not take it, so it's kind of sad. But maybe this is a good thing. This is a way for me to focus more on 2D and develop my skills there, right? So more tank designs, more drone tank designs. This could be some kind of anti-aircraft thing. It looks like something like it feels like an anti-aircraft kind of machine. Oh, this one has a bit more color with the yellows. Damn. And I like the leg wheel design. So it's kind of it has like legs, but the feet are actually wheels, right? So it's actually going to be a bit more maneuverable and more kind of amphibious in a way. So more close-ups, I guess. It looks very technical though, right? Damn. Now this one's actually a mech, like a bipedal mech. And the gun actually reminds me of the one used in the Avatar film. Because they also had like bipedal mechs, right? But they were actually manned, and they're not drones like this one. But the gun itself like reminds me of the Avatar one. Damn, even the gun looks cool. So now obviously when it comes to painting, it's not going to be very helpful, but design wise, just being able to shuffle through all of these concepts, it's going to probably inspire you to make more, to make something, because just seeing the consistency, the quality of presentation, the everything, it just looks cool, right? some more views of the same thing. So maybe he does like to leave the first kind of page as like the best page, obviously, to kind of capture the audience, and then more explorative views to kind of show the design off, right? And then some extra details or breakdowns of the platform and shit. So some kind of communication vehicle here. God, he's doing pretty much everything, right? He's designing pretty much every single thing. Damn. Oh, so this is more of a rocket launcher, I guess. Some yellows, accent colors to just make it a bit more interesting, and then a breakdown, I guess, of the rocket launcher, right? Damn. Very, very scary. Oh, I do like the way the leg spreads. Wait, does it spread in the beginning? Oh, it naturally spreads out to kind of make it more stable when it does shoot the rockets, I guess. Not sure, but yeah, it looks very, very military-ish, and the design language is essentially there. So again, I do like this batch of concepts that he did, this kind of drone project of his. And again, it shows you the amount of ideas he can come up with, which is really cool. And it's a great kind of way to inspire yourself to make more. You know, like you don't have to get stuck doing just one concept. You can pump out a lot of concepts if you want to, right? And it also shows you that you don't have to be like the best illustrator, right? You just have to be the best idea guy, right? Just present the idea well enough to kind of, you know, be useful to someone, right? So I think that's it for Jonathan Wenberg's work. I do recommend you follow him on ArtStation. I think that's his best kind of, the best way to kind of reach him or follow him or see his work is his ArtStation. Now, he did do more concepts, but I just have like a lot of tabs now, and I just kind of stopped in the drone project of his. I do think it's a person. I think it's a personal idea. I think it's a personal project of his. Future warfare. So maybe this will eventually become like actual things in the future. So that's kind of scary, but cool at the same time. So hopefully we actually fix the whole agenda before we actually start making these sort of things. And again, we shouldn't blame the tool. We should blame the people using them. So if you're kind of stuck, or if you have like an ethical thing happening right now, and you're kind of going back and forth between doing vehicles that are more kind of war oriented, it's not about that. Just think of it as a tool, you know? You shouldn't, it's not like you're not actually pulling the trigger, right? So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video this episode of the art review series. I do recommend, again, you follow Jonathan Wenberg and on ArtStation, and yeah, keep painting and stay free.